US-backed Pinochet forces, the Nixon-backed, the Kissinger-backed, the ITT-backed, the Anaconda Copper-backed Pinochet forces rose to power. They reigned for 17 years, Pinochet did, killing thousands of Chileans. It's not the first time that date was connected to terror. September 11, 1990, Guatemalan anthropologist Myrna Mack died at the hands of US-backed Guatemalan security forces. September 11, 1977, South Africa, Steve Biko, the founder of the Black Consciousness Movement, was being beaten to death in the back of a van by US-backed apartheid forces. He died in the early morning hours of September 12. September 11, 1971, Attica, the prison uprising, prisoners protesting prison conditions. 2 days later, then New York Governor Nelson Rockefeller called out the New York State troopers, and they opened fire, killing 39 men, some of them guards, critically wounding 88 others, injuring hundreds of others. September 11th is not the first time terror came to U.S. soil. Ask any African American about slavery. Ask any Native American about what has happened in this country. But it was a horrific moment. 3,000 people incinerated in an instant. We'll never know how many people died on that day, actually, because those who go uncounted in life go uncounted in death, and they are the undocumented workers who worked at the World Trade Center. And we should know their names. We should know their stories. That's what dignifies a life. We continued the broadcast, stayed hunkered down at the firehouse over the next days. We were the closest national broadcast to Ground Zero. We were within the evacuation zone. Military police was clearing everyone out, but we knew we had to keep broadcasting as very quickly the war machine was gearing up in Washington. And there were so many who lost loved ones who did not believe that that was the answer. People like Rita Lassar, 70 years old, lost her brother Abe Zalmanowitz on the 27th floor of the World Trade Center. He worked for Blue Cross Blue Shield next to his best friend Ed, was a paraplegic. Ed was, and as Abe's brother screamed at him on the cell phone to get out now, he said, as soon as the emergency workers come up and get Ed, we'll go down together. And they died with so many others. And then there was Phyllis and Orlando Rodriguez, who lost their son Gregor Nestor Rodriguez above the 100th floor of the World Trade Center. He worked for Cantor Fitzgerald, 700 of 1,000 workers for Cantor Fitzgerald died that day. A few days later, President Bush gave his National Cathedral address, and he invoked the story of Abe Zalmanowitz and called him a national hero. And Rita heard that he had done this and said no. And she wrote a letter to the New York Times that actually got published. And she said even if she knew the worst pain of her life, it would only increase her suffering to know that a woman in Afghanistan would soon lose her brother. She said, not in my name, not in my brother's name. And Phyllis and Orlando Rodriguez, hunkering down with their family, remembering Greg, wrote a letter to President Bush. It swirled around the internet, and they said it would not lessen their despair to know that a mother and father in Afghanistan would soon lose their son. They said, not in our name, not in our son's name. And a nationwide movement grew up, not in our name. September 11th, Families for Peaceful Tomorrows. And sometimes you saw them on TV, describing their loved ones. But when they moved from description to prescription, what should happen, then the media cut away, and they went to the terrorism experts, the Oliver Norths and the Henry Kissingers. Maybe the media got it right in that case. The terrorism experts, it takes one to know one. And I don't say that lightly. I started to get very nervous when Henry Kissinger said we not only have to go after the terrorists, but the countries that harbor them, because I live in the same city as Henry Kissinger. But what do I mean? You look at his role. I don't think we can talk about this glibly. In Chile, his support of Pinochet. You look at his role in Argentina, support of the generals. the dirty war that resulted in the deaths of thousands of people. In fact, just last week on Democracy Now! In the headlines, another military official in Argentina sentenced to 640 years in prison for participating in the death flights. They take the prisoners up in the planes and they drop them one by one. And then just a few days later, another news headline, a police official in Argentina sentenced to a number of years in prison for taking the infants of women prisoners and selling them to military officials to raise as their own. You know, in those days after September 11th, those pictures went up everywhere, so familiar, hundreds of them all over New York, on park benches, on the sides of hospitals, on lampposts. They'd be plastered, these color Xeroxes of photographs of people lost at Ground Zero. There'd be a picture of a young woman holding her child, and it would say, "If you've seen my wife last seen above the 30th floor of Tower 1, please call her husband." And there would be a phone number. Or a picture of a young man, "If you've seen my son, please call his mother," and a phone number. And I thought about how similar those pictures were to those carried on the placards by the mothers of the disappeared in Argentina as they walked the Plaza de Mayo. "Have you seen my granddaughter? Have you seen my grandson?" September 11th united us with people around the world against terror. When President Bush came to Ground Zero a few days later and that chant went up around him, "USA," I don't think that was the answer. It's a global community united against terror. And I do think that Osama bin Laden and his accomplices should be tried for what happened on September 11th. But I also think that Henry Kissinger should be tried for war crimes. I also wanted to comment on another date today, May 4th. We cannot forget, not that far from here, Kent State. The price of dissent. National Guard opening fire, 67 shots, 4 students dead, 9 injured. 10 days later, Jackson State, 2 students killed, many injured. We have to have a media in this country that is a sanctuary of dissent, that makes dissent commonplace. The price of dissent should not be that high. But I also wanted to comment on another September 11th. September 11th, 1993 in Haiti, in the midst of the coup. Haiti has experienced 2 coups, most recently the one last February 29th in its Jubilee year, 200 years since Haiti was born, the oldest black republic in the world in 1804, should be celebrating in such a big way now. Congress wouldn't recognize the Republic of Haiti for decades because they didn't want to inspire slaves in this country. It was born of a slave uprising, afraid that it would inspire slaves to rise up in the United States. And yet now it has experienced yet another coup. First, when President Aristide was first elected, 1990, 91, and now once again. But in the midst of that first coup, September 11th, 93, Antoine Ismaili, a Haitian businessman, was walking in a procession, incredibly bravely in the midst of the coup, behind a church, remembering yet another massacre that had taken place 5 years before, September 11th, 1988. And as he walked, he was forced to his knees in broad daylight in cold blood, and he was executed. I spent time at his house. Right around that time, the Justice Minister was executed as well, Guy Malady. And the very people involved are those that have been involved in this coup that happened on February 29th of 2004. Democracy Now! Broke the story nationally about what happened to Aristide this past year. We didn't know what had happened that weekend. We had just interviewed Mildred Aristide, the First Lady of Haiti, on February 27th, Friday afternoon. She said they weren't going to leave Haiti even though thugs were moving in on the Capitol. And then we didn't know what had happened to them. No one could reach them. And on Monday morning, March 1st, 2004, just a year ago, we got a call from U.S. Congressmember Maxine Waters and the founder of Trans-Africa, Randall Robinson, and they said,